USS Midway with Savage and Obadiah X. And what was your name again?
Crisis.
Crisis. I only know your real name. Okay, Crisis.
Crisis.
Python?
Yeah.
He doesn't stream. He's nothing important.
Crisis Python, one of the top streamers on Twitch.
40 billion views annually.
1 million people.
He bought this
I don't
shit.
even know if I'm live right now. It's still loading. It's probably not even live.
It says live.
Oh, really?
I got a notification.
Well, I'm live.
I gotta
Woo!
go comment in your chat so I can see my little sword.
What's the move?
Did you?
Crisis Python. That is a cool name. I didn't remove you.
I'm saying it's possible.
I don't think I did.
Yeah, sorry.
Double check that.
Oh, I was telling Obi.
I don't even know how, so if I did, then I
not
didn't do it
gonna
on
tell you
purpose.
No, I was.
Oh, you're locked out.
How many?
I
4.
got 16 new best friends. Oh, sure.
Hit me out of the way.
And you're together. Okay, get on this side of yellow light. This side of yellow
That
light.
means you gotta move this way.
This is the beautiful San Diego. My hometown.
The whole stream is just.
The beautiful Crisis Python. Top streamer on
Awkward.
Twitch.
We just do it together. See my stream on this.
Stream of a stream.
It's like streamception.
Streamception.
Dude, this thing's actually gonna be really useful for this.
Yeah, no, I'm like over here like.
Try not to cover it.
Pop songs.
It is really useful.
Oh, I was telling
I got it
you
from TwitchCon.
the other day when you were doing your Just Dance.
Yeah.
So I have a second computer that sits behind my laptop, and that has everybody else's streams on it, just because I want to.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I went from hosting, I think I was hosting like Chase or something, to you, and I was in the middle of like a competitive Paladins game. By the way, that game is fucking done. It's over. The
Yeah.
game is broken.
Yeah.
The
Why?
new
Oh,
patch
it
killed it.
is?
Oh my god.
Oh,
yeah.
no.
I've read about it.
I won't touch it. I spent
would it do?
180,000
What happened?
gold and still didn't get a good loadout for any of my champions.
Really?
No, it's ruined. I'll tell you that.
Oh, no.
But no, so I'm sitting there playing like diamond level play because I'm with a diamond at the time. And then all of a sudden you started jumping around dancing at my second monitor. And I was like, what the fuck? What? It caught me so
Yes.
off guard.
That's what I do. Just dance.
It was awesome.
I heard the new Paladin Pass is really good. I bet you I'd have a way better time because anything that you already had unlocked, you immediately start level 3 cards.
No.
That's what they said was gonna happen.
Yep, they said a lot of things. They also said that you were going to get all of the cards level 1 base, no
Right.
matter what.
Wait,
No,
so the
you don't get
cards
any.
now have levels?
Yes.
5 levels, something like that.
7.
7?
They said, 7 for legendaries, 5 for...
Okay.
So now I gotta buy Overwatch, is what you're saying?
Basically, I'm like looking up.
No!
Well, me and Kevin were playing Overwatch.
Paladins,
It's
we
honestly-
were so good. We were
Overwatch
good
is
together.
Right. It's a great game. It's so much simpler.
Is it really?
There's no loadouts. You have no way to customize your character.
That's the coolest part.
It makes it easy that you can just like pick and go.
Yeah.
But you can not adjust or make any.
adjustments.
I know.
We're
Just bash
talking about
Overwatch.
it now.
Since you can't make any adjustments or like personalize your character, and there's skins, right?
But like,
That everything
what
kinda
about
the
all the
same.
crystals that I bought?
I know.
The $20 Founders pack, like,
Yeah, I probably spent over the course. I mean, I've been playing it a year now.
Yeah.
Probably. That's 40 bucks.
I dumped like, yeah, that's probably what I'm at too. I dumped like 165 hours in
Can I see your phone?
since you guys showed
That's
it.
off.
It's dead?
Well, it's off. It's at like 10% if I turn it off.
Oh.
But no,
Okay.
I'm super upset.
Yeah.
I opened 103 crates.
So stupid.
103, and every single one from me. I have Zen completely loaded up. But you know who
So
I don't
now
play?
will you
Yeah.
have to get the higher level cards just by random
you
in the
can't-
crates?
You can buy like champions. So you can say I play this champion, which I didn't know until after I bought all
Hmm.
the crates. So you can go and buy like a Maldama crate. You get like
Oh, really?
only Maldama
Just for
cards,
gold?
which is fine.
Okay.
But like,
So you can like
I
pick
didn't know
someone
that.
and load them out.
Yeah, so I didn't know that until I'd spent 180,000 gold.
Get down. I'm gonna have to go. I'm gonna play with it a little bit.
Because all your essence got converted to gold. All your cards you got refunded. So you probably have like
Shit ton.
They don't have essence anymore?
No.
What was the essence for? It was for getting the
Buying
cards,
to
right?
unlock cards.
Yeah.
So now you can't unlock them. You have to
Oh.
crate
You
them.
buy chests.
And
Yeah.
they wiped everybody's loadouts.
That's
I'm like that. I'm like I
What?
have like 3 loadouts for every champion.
Yeah.
And
You had to
maybe-
start over?
Well, I mean, so
seems like bad
all the
decisions.
custom-
Yeah,
all-
when they released like the little YouTube video explaining
Did they
it,
get bought out by
everyone
EA?
did. Right?
That's
That's
what
it sounds
everybody's
like.
saying. If you go to the subreddit, like the first like 5 comments are like, "High res, how could you? High res, you're a disgusting company.
Yeah.
High res, and it's like EA in the
High
middle of
res
it,
slash
like-
EA.
the new Battlefront.
That's terrible. I can't believe they do that. Like, I feel like they have such an opportunity to like gain some ground. And
Paladins Battlefront
their player
3.
Their player count went from like, I think it was 24,000 on average to 6,000 in 2 days.
Oh,
They'll probably change it back.
jeez, that
No, they won't.
sucks.
No, because they're gonna double down on their mistakes like everyone else does, and probably just make more changes.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
people will still pay it.
Man, y'all used to play Paladins as my main. Guess I gotta find
Your
a new
main?
main.
How did you do that?
You just swipe.
How can you
Mine
see,
isn't showing up.
how can you
Wait,
see your viewers?
can someone check my stream? Because I don't even have a chat. I don't even know if it's on.
Call of
Just
Duty.
hang on.
It says
I mean, I
live.
played like a long
It
time ago.
says that all the
when I
time,
streamed.
and it lies.
But I haven't played any of the new ones.
When I
Most newest
hosted
one I've ever
myself-
played.
Or no, not
Yeah.
myself. I tried streaming
Yeah, that
once,
was the
like I
most
was
recent
driving
I
down
played.
the
That was
strip.
like, what, 3 games ago?
Everyone's
or
always
something
asking me like, "Oh, have you been to this? Do you go to the strip all the
It's a
time?" So
while
I videoed myself going down the strip, and it just kept doing
Yeah,
30-minute segments.
They're just all the same
Yeah,
thing.
That's not
mine
playing
always
without
does where it says I'm live, but I'm not really live. And I usually can tell if
Black Ops 3.
Oh,
if
Black
I don't
Ops
have
3,
anyone
yeah.
in my chat, because I usually get people right away.
Well, yeah. I mean,
I get tired of them after a while.
of course you get.
Hey!
We talked so much shit when you first started streaming.
Why are you talking shit about me? Wait, Crisis Python, can you go to my stream really quick and just see if it's even on?
Pretty sure it's okay calling him Colton.
Or
I don't know if he wants his real identity to be.
I always give his real identity.
Oh, okay.
Well, that works too.
He gets me.
Because I don't want,
like Obi works.
you know,
'cause it's like
you're like a
his middle name.
superhero. You
Yeah,
don't want to give
people call me that
away
in real life too, so that's fine.
your real name.
The I had
Judge and jury over here.
I had to change the name.
What?
on my
I wasn't
phone
judging someone. What are we talking
because it
about?
would come up with Jake Chat,
Jake Chat.
and I was like, what's that?
Oh, it's fine. You never answered anyway. So.
I answered once. I think.
One time, I think.
That's a
maybe.
lot, dude. Kevin's called me more than that. I've never answered. I don't think.
I don't
Stupid ads.
not the
Showing you
greatest.
an ad. Oh, okay.
I hate ads.
So that seems like.
guys don't
They
get
don't
along.
mesh very
I
well.
know, you guys don't get along.
How do you get rid of the ads?
Yeah, you guys
You
just
don't.
don't
You
get
Just
just
along.
don't mesh very well.
Oh, cool. All right, thanks for checking.
You just have it on him.
Like, okay.
Yeah, I'm
I know
kind
you
of
guys
going
are
back and
like
forth.
doing your whole YouTube thing, but like me saying fuck isn't gonna get the whole video demonetized. Like, there it is.
It does on YouTube
It
though.
is.
I got.
All right, guys, we're about to go on a tour. Just finished my Starbucks. There's a Starbucks on this ship. That's how modern this ship is. Super modern. Let's get the tour going.
By the way, today, folks, at 5 o'clock, the ship does close and everybody has to leave. Those of you who loved what they saw today and maybe are thirsting for more, and you didn't get to see it all. A little inside baseball. We have a special deal for everybody if you can be here tomorrow. They'll take care of you, stamp your ticket from today, and you can come aboard in the morning free. Okay? And there are lots of things to see. I'll guarantee you, if you didn't spend all day here, you didn't see everything. Okay? And you could come back and you could, if you like this tour, you could do it again, right? And the hint there is, come right up here first thing when they open the doors, because nobody's here yet, okay? Except us guys. And we'll get you right up there, okay? But anyway, lots of things to see on this tour. It's going to take, you're going to be back on deck, and we want you to, in about 20 to 25 minutes, and we want you to be in as good a health as you are right now when you return. So we'll give you a little safety briefing here to avoid the hazards that you're going to have during the tour today, okay? It's going to start right here. This is the first knee knocker. We call it a knee knocker, to step over on the way to our ladder, okay? And you want to step over any of the obstructions that you have along the way.
Oh, yeah, I
Also,
think they're like
you
tour,
have steep
like stuff
and
too.
narrow Navy ladders to climb on the way to the top, and you're going to also descend on the same kind of ladders coming down, okay? And in order to do that successfully, if you have a backpack on, you're going to want to have that turned around to the front of you as you climb, okay? Otherwise, it might hang up. It probably will hang up on some of our obstructions on the way up. Very tight fit in a couple of spots there, okay? And you want to use both hands as you climb and watch your feet carefully so you don't stumble, okay? Because if you fall, then you're going to fall back down on the people behind you. And that'd be kind of rude, wouldn't it? Okay, so watch your feet, climb carefully, keep your head down, lean forward as you climb so that you'll accommodate, everything will be accommodated on the way up. Now when you get to the top, and that's 43 steps later, you'll be turned into primary flight control space, and there will be a docent there will be assigned to your group. Okay. That docent, after everybody assembles in primary flight control, they'll close the door, and he's going to give you some time with some information there that he's prepared to tell you about the space and who worked there and how the operations operated, okay, and what these people did. Then he'll move you out of that space, and you'll go outside and on a little catwalk, which will give you a nice view of the parking lot, by the way. If you're claustrophobic at all, you don't have to look over there, but you are 88 feet down to the water at that point, above the water, okay? Then you'll be back inside the ship rapidly. You'll go down one level, and then you'll go into the chart room. The chart room and the navigator's plot. The chart room is where the navigation work was done, and you'll get a speech there about what happened inside that space, and they'll show you some of the tools that they used for their work. From there, you're going to move on to the bridge and the pilot house. The bridge, of course, is where the captain's chair, where the captain was most of the time when the ship was underway. He was on a short leash to be in the chair that's there. If you got young people, they might be honored to sit in the captain's chair. So get right up next to the docent as he's leading you in, and he'll probably put you in the chair, okay? That'll be cool. By the way, if anything goes wrong on the ship during the time you're in that chair, it's your fault. You know that, right? Just kidding. Today you're just a guest, so not a problem. Okay, anyway, the docent will tell you about the bridge and about the watch standards and so forth and what they did in that space. And that'll be pretty much the end of the tour. You'll see the captain's at-sea cabin, and then you'll descend 3 different levels down to the flight deck, and that'll be the end of the tour. All right? You can take all the pictures you want. You can use your cell phone for anything you want, except please don't carry on conversations on your cell phone while you're underway. The other thing is also please put it on vibrate so that it doesn't ring or alarm other people in your group while you're on your tour. Okay? Any questions about that? Any questions on anything? None at all. You know everything about aircraft carriers? You want to learn anything more?
Oh yeah.
You want to know more? Okay. Well, on our flight deck today, I don't know if any of you, maybe you did attend one of our 2 lectures that we have, or our talks about carrier landings and about carrier launches. Those are available on the flight deck, and they'll be open until right at 5 o'clock. You should be back down on the flight deck with probably about a half an hour yet of open time to go. And like I mentioned, if you are excited about coming back tomorrow, think about taking the opportunity to get your ticket validated and come back in the morning. Okay? All right. Well, I'm waiting for a radio call here. Again, I can entertain any questions that you might have. None? All right. Well, do you know about... Yes, sir. Go ahead.
What was the original ratio of fighters to torpedo bombers to dive bombers on the ship?
The original ratio of...
Fighters to dive bombers to torpedo bombers on the ship.
Wow. Say in 1945?
Yes.
I'm not sure what that was, but I have a feel for it. Probably about a third fighters and a third torpedo bombers, and probably another third of miscellaneous kinds of aircraft. Because there were night fighters. There were early on there were a lot of surveillance aircraft, anti-submarine, that sort of thing. Okay, this group's on its way. Okay, we're ready to go, folks. Go ahead and
Great job asking a question. Great job.
And there you go, single file. Keep your head down as you climb.
I didn't sign it.
And you might want to put your backpack. Put it on the front.
They'll do like little.
When you get to the top, you can go ahead and put it back on the back. You'll see why when you make the first turn.
I mean, that's just like the little
Beautiful San Diego. Thank you, Roger.
Glad to do it. Jack Ryan on Amazon.
Yeah, this
Tom
is
Clancy,
how I
yeah.
hold on.
I read all of his stuff.
Oh, you do?
Oh yeah.
Oh, nice, nice.
He's well, last I read, he was president of the United States, wasn't he?
I haven't gotten there yet. In fact, I have not read any of this stuff. I just have this button because it was free. I kind of want another one of these buttons.
It's easier. If you walk up sideways, it's way easier.
That's why crabs walk sideways.
You have more on. You have more of your feet. You have more of your feet on the water. You walk inside. Yep. Streamception.
It's warm right here.
Sorry.
It's probably body heat, for real. For real.
Everybody. Can you imagine? That'd be terrible. Watch your head.
I'm on a boat.
Maybe, but then it'd
I'm on a boat.
I'm going.
Take a look at me. I'm on a motherfucking boat. Where's this elevator that guy was talking about?
Yeah, Jesus.
I heard there was an elevator.
Yeah, that's right. When nobody even looks in here. That's good.
Hello. You're a real person.
Well, kind of. I'm not quite sure about it. There you go. You made it.
Thank you. Pretty.
Yeah. All right. Oh, hi, folks. Welcome to Primary Flight Control. This is the aircraft control tower, and it's run by the air boss who sits right here in front of me. The air boss is responsible for all takeoffs and landings on the ship, and he also controls the air traffic pattern 5 miles around the ship. He's got an assistant who sits right next to him, known as the mini boss. And both the boss and the mini boss will be naval aviators. And typically what happens, the boss will come in, he'll spend a year as the mini boss, and then he'll move over, finish his last year on the ship as the air boss. So if you're up here in Fly to watch a launch recovery cycle, as you looked across the flight deck, you'd see about 250 sailors. They'd all be in different colored jerseys based on the job that they do, and they'd all be communicating between themselves and the aircraft with hand signals because of the jet noise and the 30 knots of wind that's blowing down the flight deck. Now, most of the aircraft for a launch are going to be parked aft of us with their tail pointed towards the water, a lot like you see here in the museum. Now, the aircraft for the launch, the boss will call the pilots to start their engines, and after the pilots go through their post-start checks, they'll be taxied up the flight deck by a series of our yellow-shirted aircraft directors towards the Midway's 2 steam catapults. So the first 2 aircraft in line will be placed on the catapults, and then the rest will wait their turn behind our big jet blast deflector doors. So when the clock strikes launch time, the cats will start firing. And with the Midway's 2 steam catapults, we can average about a minute in aircraft as far as getting aircraft off the flight deck. So as the last couple of aircraft are waiting their turn on the catapults, back aft we're going to be clearing the landing area for our recovery. And the aircraft that we're going to recover are those from the prior launch that went off about an hour and 45 minutes ago. Those aircraft have gone off on their mission. They've come back and they're holding overhead the ship and awaiting their turn to land. So the boss will anticipate when the landing area is going to be clear, and then he'll call the aircraft down to start the recovery. And when the recovery begins, the aircraft are going to be touching down on the flight deck about where you see that black-tailed phantom with the 102 on his nose. As soon as the pilot feels the impact on the flight deck, he goes to full power. That's in case he misses an arresting wire. He just goes flying again, comes around a second time. But if he does catch an arresting wire, going to full power isn't going to stop him from stopping. The arresting gear is plenty strong. So he's going to stop him up by that last helicopter there in helicopter row with the 13 on the side. As soon as the pilot comes to a stop, he's going to be met by another yellow shirt who's going to be telling him to raise his tail hook, raise his flaps, fold his wings, and taxi out of the landing area, because we've got another aircraft right behind him about 45 seconds later. So with all this coming and going on the flight deck, the boss has this status board. It's stowed now. Normally it's swung over so the boss could read it, and there would have been a sailor standing behind it writing backwards in grease pencil to keep it up to date for the boss. And over where many of you are standing now, There would be aircrew from each of the squadrons. Their job is to provide the boss with information about their aircraft if there happens to be a problem, and they're also somebody for the boss to yell at if one of their squadron mates messes up on the flight deck. Some other things to tell you about. This box with the orange dials monitors the weight setting of our arresting gear. So as each aircraft in the recovery comes into land, our 3 arresting gear engine rooms will set the maximum landing weight for that aircraft in their equipment, and it'll show up on these dials. So the sailor at the station can look at the dial settings, report to the boss, say, boss, resting gear is set for an F4 Phantom. And this box here controls our optical landing system, or Fresnel lens, gives the pilot a visual indication of his glide slope. It's physically located directly across from us, and if you look across the flight deck, it's just to the left of those blue trash cans that you see over there. Also notice that we have a button for every aircraft that lands on the ship, because we actually customize the glide slope that we show to the pilot based on their distance between the pilot's eye and his tail hook when he's in the optimum landing attitude. And what that allows is, no matter what aircraft is landing on the ship, if he's doing everything right, in theory, that tail hook is going to touch down on the same spot, no matter what the aircraft is. So that gives you a brief glimpse of what air operations are like around the ship here. We're going to go down one level and talk about how we navigate the ship in the chart house. So follow me. Here we go this way.
That's the one word I know. 不知道.
Okay, we got a crowd.
I think everybody was born to do this. It has life in that.
Oh, yeah.
This is so steep. I like going up better than going down. Some people were only born with one hand, actually. So I'm honoring them by
It's sort of off
practicing.
and on between too hot and too cold in here.
Nice. Hello.
1945. Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Yeah, that's called a squat box, and you can tell why. Oh, you stick your finger in. The brass contraption that you see there as you walk in the door is part of our state-of-the-art communication system. It's actually a pneumatic tube, and the other end of the tube is down in our radio room. So if a message for the navigation department comes in, they would decode the message, print it out in a hard copy, and stick it in a little cylinder known as a bunny, and then they could shoot it up here to the chart house. So we would ring that calling when it came in, and there would have been a box under the chute. So when you open it up, it would fly around and land in the box, and that was instant messaging on the ship. So welcome to the chart house. This is where a lot of the ship's navigation was performed by our quartermasters. In the Navy, a quartermaster is a sailor who specializes in the art of navigation. And they all would have worked for the navigator, whose nickname was the Gator. And he would have been a naval aviator like the boss and the mini-boss. And his job is to basically know where the ship is, know where it's going, know how it's going to get there. We'd also store charts in the chart house. So I've got some charts laid out for you. Think of a chart as a nautical map used for navigation. Things you'd see on a chart that you may not see in a regular map are things like the latitude and longitude lines. The compass rose, which is that series of circles which tell you the difference between a true heading and magnetic heading. And where we've got water involved, you'll see a color-coded difference between shallow water and deep water. And in the deep water, you'll see the depth of water measured in feet or fathoms or whatever. Now the chart in front of me is of Subic Bay, Philippines. That was a common stop for the Midway for ship repairs, and it was also a favorite liberty port for the sailors. And in the forward part of the chart house, we've got a chart of Yokosuka, Japan. That was the home port of the Midway from 1973 until 1992 when the ship was decommissioned. And behind me here, I've got a smaller chart of San Diego Bay. And you can see how San Diego Bay is actually almost a complete horseshoe. And you can see where the Midway is actually located here on San Diego Bay. And if you look out that porthole, that bridge that you see there is the bridge to Coronado Island, which is depicted right there on the chart. Also, that thick black line that you see on the chart represents a track that the ship might follow as it was entering or leaving these ports. And that would have been a very busy time here in the chart house because the quartermasters would all be involved in a form of navigation known as piloting. And what piloting involves is they would take bearings to prominent points depicted on the chart and then draw those bearing lines right on the chart itself. And then where you get two or more bearing lines crossed, that would be a fix. That's where the ship is located at that point in time. So all those little crosshatches that you see along the intended track there represent fixes that were taken. And they would the quartermasters would set up to take a fix every minute or every 2 minutes or every 3 minutes even, depending on what they thought they needed to monitor their progress along that track. Piloting is a great form of navigation. It's very accurate, but it's limited by the fact that you have to be in the sight of land in order to use it. And that wasn't always the case for the Midway. So if the Midway's out in the middle of the ocean, the quartermasters have a couple of options. And one of those options is actually celestial navigation. So we've got a sextant under the plexiglass cover here, and there's a picture of a sextant up on the Yokosuka chart. What a sextant is going to do is very precisely measure the angle between the stars and the horizon. And then when you combine that with very accurate time, which is measured by one of those 3 chronometers located just in front of my plexiglass cover, the navigator could go into the celestial tables, do some math, and actually come up with a line of position that they could draw on a chart. Typically with celestial navigation, you have to shoot at least 3 stars in order to get a fix that you can believe in. And then that fix is only going to be accurate within about 2 or 3 miles or so. But hey, you're up
Stars,
to
man.
That's all you have to do.
Hell yeah.
But the quartermasters didn't have to rely on ancient forms of navigation when the ship was in service. Right after World War II, when the Midway was commissioned, long-range land-based radio navigation was available, like Omega and Loran was available, same type of systems. And then in the mid-'80s, satellite-based GPS became available. NavSat was one of those early systems. And early on, they only had a few satellites available, so they'd have to wait for one to fly by in order to get a fix. And they would use this box here to take those early GPS fixes. So this box is state-of-the-art GPS about 30 years ago. Nowadays, your smartphone has probably more functionality than this box ever did. So you can see how much smaller things have gotten over time. One last thing to tell you about is this box here is the ship's bathymeter. Measures depth of water below the keel. So today as a museum, we float in about 29 feet of water. When the Midway was in actual service with all its aircraft and the like, we draw about 35 feet of water, which is more in line with today's active duty carriers. There are 2 carriers home ported here in San Diego, and there's 1 import today. I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to the bridge, which is our next stop. So we're going to be walking along a little catwalk known as Vulture's Row up to the bridge. As you go in the bridge, you'll see a pedestal just off to the left. It's a gyro compass with a telescope on top, known as an alidade, and that's what the quartermasters would have used to take those bearings that I was talking about during piloting.
Not like this though.
No, this is like
So is this.
Doggy. Look at that little doggy. It's so cute.
Taking a photo shoot. This dude's name is great. Obi-Wan can bloom.
I'll think about it.
I want a doggy like that. It's so cute. Look at how
This
it
is my
walks.
third time.
It's like doo 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 doo. That's what it sounds like when it walks. See the doggy? It's going doo 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 doo.
Yes, I see the dog.
The difference in like screen quality.
It's so cute. Yeah, on my stream you get high quality dog commentary.
Entertainment. See, I just do like gorgeous sunset shots.
Look
Which
how
is
pretty
on a phone,
the
it's just a
little puppy
Glare on a
is
screen.
Yeah,
right
basically.
there. There's the puppy.
We're just waiting for the tour to
So cute.
That's 5 people watching.
So adorable. Puppies are the best.
I had 5. They bailed.
Looks
Oh,
so
man.
tiny from here, but it is tiny as a
Just
tiny
mum-
little puppy. Little puppy!
I thought we were all split on.
Can I have a puppy?
Oh god, there it is. She won't drop it.
Welcome to the bridge. I mentioned we have an active duty carrier on board here, and it's right where the sun is, so you really can't see it. But you can see the outline of its island structure right there. It's the Carl Vincent. The other carrier home ported here in San Diego is the Teddy Roosevelt, and they're actually on deployment now, so they're actually in the Western Pacific right now. So, welcome to the bridge, also known as the Captain's Bridge. This is the command and control center for the ship. I also like to say this has got one of the best views in San Diego where you don't have to buy a drink. But like I said, this is the command and control center for the ship. It's also the captain's office. So when the captain goes to work every day, that would be his station there. CO stands for commanding officer. And the captain of the ship would have been a full Navy captain. That means
You want me
4
the gator?
stripes on his sleeve. And he also would have been a naval aviator,
What's up,
just like
gator?
the air boss and the mini boss and the navigator. Speaking of the navigator, his station is on the other end of the bridge. Remember, his nickname was the Gator as a navigator, and that's why there's an alligator on his chair. And he actually would have spent more of his time up here on the bridge than he would back in the chart house, because this is really where the action is. So the captain of the ship could take control of the ship at any point in time, but he normally leaves that job to a group of sailors known as the Bridge Watch Team, headed by the officer of the deck. And the officer of the deck would have a couple of junior officers assisting him, and they're actually in training to eventually qualify as officer of the deck. And they would have spent most of their time up in this area here with all the instrumentation and the radars and the view of where the ship is going. And one of those 3 officers would be designated as what we call the conning officer. And the conning officer was important because he was the only one that could give orders back here to the pilot house to change a ship's course and speed. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. Also, one of the big jobs of the conning officer, when we're recovering aircraft, we want to turn the landing area. And the center line of the landing area is that big yellow and white line that you see off to the left here. We want to turn that directly into the wind. And we want 30 knots of wind blowing down the landing area. So if we only have 15 knots of natural wind, what the conning officer will do, he'll call down to the engine room and say we need 15 knots of ship speed to get the full 30 knots of wind down the flight deck. Also notice how thick the walls on the pilot house are. When the Midway was first constructed, that was the bridge, and this area where I'm standing now is a catwalk just like Vulture's Row. But after about a year or so of service, they realized that the bridge just wasn't big enough. And so what they did is they enclosed this area. This is really what the bridge looked like for the entire time that the ship was in service. So what you're looking at is the original armor plating on the bridge back when the ship was first constructed. So let me go inside the pilot house here, and I'll talk a little bit about how we drive the ship. Just like your car, we've got a steering wheel, and we've got a horn, and we've got a brake pedal and an accelerator pedal. But this is the ship's wheel. In Navy terms, we know it's known as the helm, and the sailor standing there would be known as the helmsman. Typically going to be a young sailor, maybe 18, 19 years old.
And it actually takes him a while to get the feel of the ship, because as you turn the ship wheel and the Midway's two rudders turn, the ship doesn't necessarily start turning right away. And then once it starts turning, it doesn't want to stop turning. And so until you get the feel of the ship, it's very easy to look like a snake going through the water, where you look going wiggling around as you go through the water. On the helm console, he's got a couple of gyro compasses, which give a true heading. We got a primary and a backup. Backup to the gyro compasses is this magnetic compass, known as the binnacle, and then that handle above the helmsman's head is the ship's steam whistle. So that's our horn, if you will. As far as changing speed, that's done from this box here. It's known as the engine order telegraph. How we convey speed tables down, changes down to the engine room. Also, you'll see on the top dials it says ahead and back. We can turn our propellers backwards, and so that's how we can slow the ship down. That's how we can brake the ship. And also the little chart that you see here is the ship's speed table. If you look on there, and you'll see how we do 15 knots. It's all ahead standard, and then 90 RPM on the Midway's 4 propeller shafts. So what they would do is they'd set all ahead standard, like up in the top, and then 090 down in the digital indications here. You see there's two sets of everything. We change something up here. We ring bells down in the engine room. They match the settings coming from the bridge, and when everything is all matched up, the sailor at this station, known as the lee helmsman, can report to the conning officer that the engine room's now answering 15 knots. Some other sailors on the bridge team, the quartermaster of the watch is going to be over there at the navigator station, and he's going to keep a current log of what the ship is, everything that happens during their watch is known as the deck log, and the officer of the deck will sign it. One last thing to tell you about, you see the Midway during underway replenishment. This is how we get commodities, food or fuel or you name it aboard the ship. And they would have used this little room off to the side here, is known as auxiliary con, because the Midway has to maintain station on that supply ship, and that's how they can see the relative motion needed to do that. So that gives you a brief glimpse of what goes on here in the island. We're going to go out the back and down 3 levels, which will put you back on the flight deck. Look to your left as we exit. You'll see the captain's at-sea cabin. This is where the captain would spend the night when the ship was underway. He's got another room on the ship, which you can see if you go down on the flight deck. If you go aft about 30 feet or so, you'll see a hatch that says Captains and Admirals Country. You can go down there.
I stirred it. Hey, pull the horn. Do it. What if it works? Pull it.
He's got a nice room. Thank you.
Okay.
就那边有一个 commander， 有个叫 CO 的 chief officer，commander officer， 是为了告诉那个船长，要他把那个船调到他面向风向的那个方向。对，这样那个飞机起飞的时候就不会被风向影响。现在在海上这么颠簸，要上下这个楼梯有点困难。在 stationary 上下都挺艰难。
Steep, steep, steep. All right, here we are. Here we are back on the flight deck. We've had a beautiful tour of the USS Midway, named after the island of Midway. Wait for me!
As I almost shook and died.
What is this?
Spares.
Oh.